B-17. Quite a lot of history's notable aircraft have started life as private ventures, and so it was with the Gladiator. Gloster's design team developed it without a particular requirement to bid for. But as the RAF's new monoplane fighters, the Spitfires, Hurricanes, Bolton, Paul Defiance and so forth were delayed, the RAF decided it needed an interim fighter, and Gloster's new design, which they had named the SS-37 and had made a very early public appearance at the 1935 Royal Review of the RAF here at Duxford. Seemed to fit the bill. It entered service with number 72 Squadron in February 1937. But the fact that the tide was turning away from the biplane fighter in favour of the monoplane became all too apparent. 4 RAF units were operating Gladiators when war broke out in September 1939. 2 of those squadrons were sent to France as part of the Advanced Air Striking Force. All their aircraft had been lost within just 10 days of coming up against the Germans in May 1940. That same year, Gladiators of both number 263 Squadron RAF and the Norwegian military air arm were involved in the efforts to defend Norway against a German invasion. 263 Squadron's aeroplanes arrived aboard the Royal Navy carrier HMS Glorious in April. After only a few days, they were evacuated because they had so many unserviceabilities among the aeroplanes. Were lost, along with 8 of their pilots. Of course, the most famous exploits of Gladiators were by Sea Gladiators of the Fleet Air Arm, operating with the Howell Farr fighter flight in the defence of Malta. But Gladiators were also involved in the Battle of Britain. Number 247 Squadron RAF flew them in defence of the Plymouth dockyards. 804 Squadron of the Fleet Air Arm flew them in Orkney in defence of the naval base of Scapa Flow. That could be put on the undercarriage spans, and you can see just that configuration, albeit without bombs, on the aircraft in the lead of this pair. The unusual wing design was the result of role experience in the Army cooperation field that was passed on by pilots, highlighting the need to give the crew a really good field of vision, and this helped facilitate that. 4 Lysander squadrons were deployed to France in September 1939 to perform artillery spotting and reconnaissance. One of them even managed to shoot down a Luftwaffe Heinkel HE-111 bomber that November. But during the Battle of France the following year, the Lysanders' vulnerability to German attack became all too apparent. Nevertheless, after pickup, they weren't especially successful in that role. They also patrolled potential invasion areas along the south coast, rather boring work for their pilots. Colin, anything but boring were the missions undertaken by Lysanders in support of the SOE, the Special Operations Executive.
Yes, Churchill set the mission for the SOE to set Europe ablaze, and this rather unusual, as you say, rather unusual looking aircraft is perfect for the missions that they carried out. It's a very rugged aeroplane, ideal for landing in rough ground, short takeoff and landing roll, and they were used as a taxi service to ferry agents into occupied France. And the whole prospect of doing that must have been quite daunting, not only for the agents going into enemy territory, but for the pilots as well. They'd be flying across a darkened France to try to locate, well, they hoped, a friendly field to land in. Just looking out of the window to try and see the right signal to give them the confidence to land in that field and deliver or collect those agents.
Literally, of course, Colin, they were landing by moonlight. That's the title of Hugh Verity's memoir about his time as an SOE pilot.
Their missions one at a time, but Hugh Verity, who I did meet some years ago, told me that very often they were flying pairs and sometimes in 3 at a time to land in those remote fields in occupied France.
And the second of the 2 Lysanders flying past there, the one from the Shuttleworth collection, is in the colours of a number 161 squadron.
5 minutes maybe, because obviously they clearly had to get away quickly.
And here's the last of our Mercury-engined aeroplanes running through solo now, the Bristol Blenheim. And this another aircraft that started out as a private venture as a result of Lord Rothermere, the owner of the Daily Mail, wanting a new high-speed transport aircraft for his personal use. He funded the Bristol Aeroplane Company's development of an aircraft they called the Type 142. Rothermere then presented it to the nation under the name Britain First, and the Air Ministry was, to put it mildly, very intrigued, because this Bristol Type 142, this executive transport, was faster than most contemporary frontline aircraft in the RAF. So the Air Ministry decided to adopt it as a new light bomber for the Royal Air Force. As such, they changed the design a bit. They decided to give it a mid-mounted wing and more powerful versions of the Mercury engine. And the Blenheim 1, as it was known in its first guise, entered service with the RAF not far from here at Witten, near Huntingdon, with number 114 Squadron in March 1937. Now, to give you an idea of the sort of advancement that was going on in aviation during that period, it replaced the Hawker Hind biplane light bomber. The Hind had a top speed of 186 miles per hour. The Blenheim 1's top speed was 260 miles an hour. So it was a huge leap forward. But events were to prove that it wasn't still enough. Potential to sit in this aircraft as a long-range. Absolutely, the state of the art for aeroplanes like this was now so vulnerable. They fought on heroically, however, in all the campaigns in which these aircraft were involved. Daylight losses of Blenheim fighters were increasingly heavy. They switched increasingly to the night fighter role, and some of them were fitted with airborne interception radar. They were rather more successful in that purpose than they had been by day. Bomber Command and Blenheims, meanwhile, were continuing to take the fight to the Germans very much against the odds. It was a Blenheim that managed to carry out the first U-boat sinking the RAF managed to achieve in World War II in March 1940 without the aid of surface vessels. And here, some of the Blenheim's fighter contemporaries from that late 30s, early World War II period, shooting into the air, the Spitfire 1A,